Welcome back to Pagan Valley, everyone. Tonight we are continuing our descent into the madness occurring in Northwest Massachusetts by taking a look at the newest video in the GREYLOCK Tapes, a recent series that I did a what the hell video for not long ago. With its latest installment being the longest in the series, I'm sure there will be plenty for us to dig our teeth into. If you haven't watched the GREYLOCK Tapes, I have added a link to the channel in the description for you to click on. Definitely go watch them without my analysis so you get that pure horror experience. I'm going to keep my recap short, so if things don't sound familiar, you should go watch the series again. Basically, we have been following someone uncovering the archive of a ruined company called Semiodyne. From the archives, we have been shown a timeline of events occurring near Mount Greylock in Berkshire County, Massachusetts. The most important date is the early summer of 1987, where Semiodyne opened a ruin in Mount Greylock, which resulted in Berkshire County being tormented with spirits, the living dead, a militia group, and a conspiracy that the US government is helping cover up the strange happenings. Some major players in the game right now is private investigator Jim Milgren, who I suspect is the man walking through the woods in a lot of the tapes. I also still think he might be the one to reboot the Semiodyne system at the beginning of the series. Another two characters that have been recurrent are Alex Marsh and his partner Tiffany Crisady. Alex is an employee of Semiodyne, and Tiffany is a school teacher in Berkshire County. Tiffany was pregnant until the ruins were opened up by Semiodyne, in which her child disappeared from her womb, which made it into the papers. With Alex being an employee of Semiodyne, I think there are a lot of theories surrounding his place in the story after his child was taken. One of which I now have is going to be a meetup between him and Jim Milgren at some point. Lastly, the man who hired Jim Milgren was a previous archaeologist and now currently a corpse named Arnold Rivers. This man was present at the opening of the ruins but managed to escape the sickness that turned the miners into cannibal, zombie-like monsters. However, with his expertise in archaeology, he leaves a recording explaining that the ruins discovered have every great society's artifacts there, including some that Arnold thought looked beyond human. This all leaves us with more questions than answers. What does Semiodyne want in the ruins? How did they invent the thought-form manifester, and so on? And remember that despite a lot of this timeline happening in 1987, the series does span from the 60s to the mid-90s, so there are a lot of gaps to cover. So let's start picking apart this behemoth of a video titled Messages from the Dead. In the description, we get this quote that must be from something. It's not the Bible, or at least any translation of the Bible I could find. It could be something from ancient mythology, but serpents were in most of them, so I don't know. It reads, "The serpent's right eye was plucked from his head and was transformed, and engulfed in a great flame that was fashioned to provide light for all of creation. And lo, it was made to nourish the earth, so that life might thrive and flourish from it." The video begins by taking us back into the woods of Berkshire County with a familiar flashlight and camera from previous wood-related videos we have seen. Our stranger approaches what I think might be the same tree in a previous video, but maybe not, and finding a dead rat at the foot of it. Then we get the first big reveal of this long video. As our cameraman reaches down for the rat, we see a thick glove that we have seen before. The hand at the end of the emergency broadcast video that was breaking into the house. Although we don't have an identity yet, these two have to be connected. And if we follow my theory, then that would make this the same character as the stranger in the woods in the second video. But I already hear you in the comments shouting that I theorized that the person in the house was the stranger. And yeah, it's still a loose end, but this will make more sense later. The video then cuts to where the 9th video in the series cut off, with the answering machine revealing that Alex and Tiffany were partners. But since that was an answering machine in their home, then someone must have called their house when no one was there. Continuing this scene into this video, we can notice that this call came in around noon on May 18, 1987, which would be well after the home intruder attack and Tiffany's baby being taken. And it's revealed that the caller was Alex, trying to get a hold of a grief-stricken Tiffany at home. Take a look.
Hey, babe. I'm just checking in. Could you please give me a call as soon as you can? Don't worry about work either, please. You're way more important, okay? Okay. I love you. Bye. After we lost the baby, I stayed home for almost a month. We both took it hard, but I was just really worried about Tiffany. She seemed to only be getting worse with time. She spent a lot of time by herself. When it came time for me to return to work, we decided I would call home every day during my lunch break, just so we could talk and check in on each other. She always picked up the phone whenever I called. She knew it would worry me sick if she didn't pick up the phone. But this time, on that day, she didn't pick up. Tiffany, babe, still haven't heard from you. Hope everything's okay. You're probably just busy doing something, but we've been talking every day since I've been back to work, so, you know, just, I'm getting a bit worried, so please call me back, okay? Love you. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm gonna head home. I'm sorry, I'm kind of freaking out. I'll be there soon.
So this is some development in Tiffany's and Alex's story. After a month of the loss of her child, Tiffany is still at home grieving, and Alex, supporting her, calls her every day from work. But like he said when he was questioned, Tiffany had only gotten worse with time. Some of you are probably seeing where this is going, so I won't point out the obvious to avoid demonetization. While Tiffany is deceased, the footage of the ritual circle on the ground might imply that Tiffany knew more about what was happening in Berkshire County than what was let on. Perhaps this was a desperate chance for a parent to get their child back. Our video then cuts to an old recorded computer screen for the Massachusetts State Medical Officers, and we are introduced to Dr. Albrecht, who is performing the autopsy on Tiffany the day after she passed away. Interestingly, we learn that despite the destroyed eyes and overall gruesome appearance, she didn't struggle or was a victim of violence when she died. Also, samples were taken of the black substance that was coming from her face. We then learned that a symbol was carved into her stomach several hours after she died, which might line up with the ritual circle from earlier. The last thing in this section of note is that we do see a return of the electronic distortion, which we know can be a result of nearby thought forms. The next part of our video looks like a much older recording, since we see a picture of Tiffany as a little girl and an unidentified doctor. After some dialogue between them, he appears to be some kind of therapist or psychologist for Tiffany, who, in a weird twist for this series, is apparently able to see entities that aren't there. Entities that might be Tulpas if Tiffany possesses some kind of energy to see them. But we cut back to Dr. Albrecht, recording in his personal log about Tiffany's autopsy, where he reveals some upsetting info about something that occurred when he and an assistant conducted the autopsy that he chose to keep out of the state records. Take a listen.
I conducted an examination of Miss Tiffany Crisaldi today. Her body arrived shortly before I was to leave the office for the day, but I decided to at least begin external examinations. Though it seemed misfortune loomed over the proceedings. Electrical flickers and inexplicable drops and spikes in room temperature. Repairs may be required. I wanted to refrain from mentioning this part whatsoever, but I feel compelled to do so. After placing Miss Crisaldi in storage and moving on to cleaning up, my assistant Sarah mentioned that she'd heard what sounded like a woman crying, coming from the direction of the cooler. I shrugged off her remark and let her leave early, telling her she was likely stressed or overtired, and I continued cleaning up on my own. I didn't dare to tell her that I heard it as well.
So Tiffany was making noise inside the morgue freezer, and also Dr. Albrecht noticed the lights flickering as well, so there could have been a tulpa in the mortuary lab as well. The video then returns back to the recording of Tiffany as a little girl, where we see this quote-unquote doctor use a guided meditation on Tiffany in order for her to face the entities she is seeing. It's unnerving to watch, and it is one of the best examples, I think, of where less is more. It's what makes analog horror great, in my opinion, because it's here that a series turns your imagination against you. I'm going to start this clip pretty late in the dialogue because it is a long part of the video, so if you want to see the full thing, then please go watch the original video.
And that's when you can see something different that's never been there before. Tell me what you see.
It's a door next to my window.
That's right, it's a door. What does the door look like, Tiffany?
It looks black. It has weird marks on it. The wood looks weird.
Walk to the door and open it.
I'm scared.
It doesn't matter if you're scared. You must open the door. Good job, Tiffany. Now tell me what's on the other side of the door.
It's a small room. Somebody's in there.
No, Tiffany, you're alone.
No. There's someone here. He's facing away from me. He's standing and tall. He's very tall.
Tiffany, you are alone. Nobody else is there. Now tell me what else is in the room.
There's a TV. The screen is all fuzzy, and the tall man is watching it.
Tiffany, I want you to focus on removing the man from your mind. When I snap my fingers, he will be gone. You will be alone.
The man's shaking, His body is cracking.
Okay, Tiffany, I'm going to count down from 5. When I snap my fingers, you will return to the real world. 5. You're feeling more awake
He's
now.
turning around.
4. Everything around you is becoming
He's
hazy.
looking at me. He sees me.
3. Tiffany, you can feel the chair you're sitting in again. 2. Everything around you fades to the blackness behind your eyes. 1. Full control of your body.
So Tiffany was seeing something as a little girl that has to be connected to the events happening at GREYLOCK later in her life. This door with weird marks on it and the tall man watching TV that Tiffany asked, "Who are you?" to. It feels like this is hinting at some sort of antagonist in the series, besides the Semiodyne Company. Also, just for fun, this whole scene with the doctor is very similar to a scene in an analog horror series I haven't talked about on this channel. If you're a regular in the analog horror scene, you probably have heard of Somnium Dreamviewer. It's a smaller series that I believe is criminally underrated. There is a scene in its evidence tape video where a user of the Dreamviewer records himself talking about his weird dreams, and in those dreams is a black door, but then he starts seeing the black door when he's awake, but when he finally walks through it, he disappears and no one can find him. Anyway, I just thought I would add that, as that is another series I want to share with all of you, but if you're eager to see it, please go watch it for yourself, and a friend of the channel, Nightfare, also had a great video discussing the series, so check their video out too. At the end of the nightmare, we see a single frame of Tiffany before the video changes to a home recording following the stranger in the woods, who appears to have taken the dead rodent home. We can see Gun Digest catalogs on the desk, which might be referencing the emergency broadcast that told people to arm themselves from intruders when at home. We see the same gloves cut open the rodent, and in a truly disturbing scene, they remove a cassette from the carcass. Playing it gives us what I think is the biggest new detail in the video.
Mr. Melvin, I have some very important information for you pertaining to the events you have been investigating. You must have questions regarding who I am, how I located you, and what reason I am contacting you. I won't be answering any of those questions, but I will be clear in due time. For now, I am simply offering you information. You can take it or leave it. It's impressive you remained alive for this long. But then again, you've gone to great lengths in the past in order to survive, haven't you? I'm going to tell you a story, Jim. A story that you've been dying to hear.
So let's take this one piece at a time. We are shown that the man at the beginning of this video with the gloves is Jim Melgren, which, considering where we have seen these gloves before, I think my theory stays strong that the man in the second video was Jim investigating the woods. As for the emergency broadcast video, I'm not sure how this reveal fits, because we saw this glove jump scare us in that footage. I can think of two possibilities right now. One, the guy at the window is not Jim. It's an intruder that the emergency broadcast warned about that we discussed in my last video. and the person who broke into the house is Jim still investigating. Or 2, this is Jim, which means the person who broke into the house wasn't Jim, it's an intruder, which now complicates any suggestions that the intruder militia in the mountains isn't real. They have to be confirmed real if this is the way it goes. Either I'm missing something or this is intentionally made to be a puzzle. And if it is one, maybe this symbol and the people who made the recording might be the next piece to it. The symbol carved into Tiffany's stomach belongs to some group in Berkshire County. Because of the carving on her, if they did it, then maybe this is some sort of blood cult connected to the ruins in Mount Greylock. This group could also be the militia that the emergency broadcast was for, and they were breaking into people's homes, and I guess doing the same thing they did to Tiffany onto other people? They clearly aren't a friend of Jim, as they mention they are surprised he has stayed alive for so long. But they also mention some eerie details about our private investigator. They say the line, "You've gone to great lengths in the past in order to survive," which on my initial watch might imply some sort of military service. Jim does have a gun digest on his desk after all. Hey everyone, I wanted to quickly add one more theory I came up with while editing. I've seen a lot of people in the comments give this theory that the intruders in Berkshire County are not human, but tulpas, which is a really good theory, and with that path in mind, I came up with this connection. The intruder at the window is wearing a glove, so if this is a tulpa and essentially a ghost, maybe it needs to wear gloves in order to interact with physical objects, meaning that these masked figures in the woods are all spirits, and their ability is not just to manifest, but actually turn others also into tulpas. Like, let's look at Tiffany's transformation. She, from an early age, was able to see manifested thought forms, and she possessed an absurd amount of spiritual energy, like the orientation video mentioned. When her baby was taken, her grief would have released an enormous amount of energy that these tulpas used to exist. And like moths to a flame, the group in the mountains had a target, breaking into her house and performing a ritual, which in the end turned Tiffany into a tulpa, which we saw at the end of the video. And here's the really fun part of the theory. What is Jim also wearing like our intruder? What did the voice recording say about Jim? I'm surprised you've managed to survive this long. The lengths you would go in order to survive. What if Jim is a tulpa? Once a human like Tiffany, sacrificed and turned into one of the others on the mountain. But at some point, Jim fled this group, escaping back into Berkshire County, and donning clothes to wear in order to blend in with everyone else. And remember those distortions on his camera in the woods? And the voice recorded on the camera talking about a carcass of an animal. It was extremely distorted, as if the onboard microphone was being manipulated. Jim is affecting his camera with his presence. And what if he approached Arnold Rivers after the ruins opened up, asking him who opened the site, which has angered the tulpas around Berkshire County? I really enjoy this theory, and I think some parts of it might be right, but you never know. I just had to share this with all of you and get your thoughts on it before we wrap up this video. And before you mention, yes, I am aware that GREYLOCK uploaded a video after this one while I was editing. After watching through it, and it only being a few minutes long, I made the decision to push it to a part 3 for this series. Anyway, let's go back to the video. Love you. Taking a step back and looking at the entire game board, I think this group is going up against Semiodyne. I talked about it in the last video that the series felt like Berkshire County was turning into a battleground between Semiodyne with the government and some local group on the mountain which we now know is real. And perhaps the weapon they are both using are the thought forms or tulpas. Semiodyne using whatever power they dug up in the mountain, which eventually led to the thought form manifester, and this militia or cult who might be using some sort of ritual involving human sacrifice in order to create thought forms, sending out thought forms of their own into Berkshire County to hunt more people, which is why they said it was surprising Jim was still alive. But the only proof I have that they can also use thought forms is based on what happened to Tiffany in the visuals shown to us. She was around that ritual circle and something supernatural ended her life. And in that last scene in this video, she has turned into either a thought form or one of the zombie-like creatures like the miners, and able to kick open the freezer door. What I don't have proof for is whether this symbols group can do this to anyone in Berkshire County, or is Tiffany somehow more connected because of her visions in her childhood? Perhaps even that doctor whose eyes was blacked out. Perhaps that was a doctor, but also a person in this cult in Berkshire County. Like I said in my last video, there are gaps to be filled in between established dates in this series, and I'm happy to see new stuff fill in that space. But honestly, if this series gets any more complicated, I'm actually going to have to set up a poster board of clues and connect them with red string to help put shit together. So I guess we'll see if I'm going to the arts and crafts store when the next video comes out. As for theories, I feel like while we have learned a lot about many players on the board, it doesn't feel like we have had any major developments in that quote-unquote battle I mentioned. I don't even think Semiodyne was mentioned in this video. Maybe by Alex, but only in passing. So not much has significantly changed in my original analysis. As for predictions, I think Jim is going to have some backstory connected to the military's thought form program, maybe as a soldier or something before becoming a private investigator, and that's how Arnold Rivers got in touch with him. As for the story Jim is going to be told by the group, I think it's going to be an explanation of Semiodyne's intentions with the mountain and thought forms, and that their group has protected those ruins for centuries using their own thought forms. I could be wildly off because of how bizarre the series is, but I feel like from a story perspective, that's where I would take it. As for Alex Marsh, I think he's going to take a back seat in the next video. It doesn't feel like his story is advancing, more like he's just a name to connect events together. But ultimately, I think he's going to go back to Semiodyne to hunt for answers about Tiffany's death, as he joined the Unit 13 program in 1993. Maybe even working with Jim and becoming sort of a man on the inside. And Tiffany's visions of this tall, shaking man watching the TV, I have no idea what that could be referencing, so it's probably going to be something that comes up later to explain how her ability is a part of all of this. Hell, I don't even know what she turned into at the end of this video because it's so ambiguous. As for a final note on this new video, I wanted to give it some praise for recreating an old computer screen to provide visuals for the important dialogue. It's definitely a lot more stimulating than just text on a black screen with some cross-dissolved images thrown up and a VHS overlay thrown over. Don't get me wrong, all of that has its place, but I also like seeing new ways to present stories while also sticking to the era that they are set in. Also, I love the visual of there being a cassette in the belly of a rat. It's just so creepy and awesome, when it easily could have just been a tape sitting on the forest floor or like duct tape to the tree. It's just so much extra. But I think that wraps up this addition to the GREYLOCK series. I've been reading a lot of your guys' comments, and a lot of your theories are really interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of you actually turn out to be correct. But did you find any more clues in this latest video, or have a new theory about the GREYLOCK tapes? Let me know down below. And while you're down there, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more content. And if you want to see your name at the end of each video, then why not become a Patreon supporter? You can find a link to our Patreon site in the description. With that, this has been Pagan Valley, and I wish you all a good evening.